Welcome everybody. This is the second day of our Deep Online 10th Anniversary Festival. And hopefully some of you have already joined some of the wonderful sessions that we had yesterday. We've got loads more later today and all through the week, ending with the Deep Symphony on Friday afternoon.
Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Tracey and I live in Folkestone, and I've been involved in activism for 7 years. In this session, we're going to focus on how to provide the support dementia activists need.
You want to say that last bit again?
I can't say that word very well. It's got too many S's in it for my list. In this session, we're going to focus on how to provide the support dementia activists need.
Yay. Thank you. And now you can relax because we're going to show a short film to kick us off. A very short new film which highlights some of the activism which happens in Deep. Scottish activists, including Nancy McAdam, James McKillop and Agnes Houston. Most of the work was developed during a short residency in the Lake District. They created textile banners for an exhibition called No Limits. Banners are a classic symbol of activism, protest, and a call for change. About 10 years ago, Dr. Ruth Bartlett, a researcher, worked with Scottish activists, including Nancy McAdam, James McKillop, and Agnes Houston. Most of the work was developed during a short residency in the Lake District. They created textile banners for an exhibition called No Limits, Reimagining Life with Dementia. This explored the individual and collective strength of people with dementia. The exhibition toured Bradford, Glasgow and Liverpool, and the film, directed by Anne Milne, was screened at the International Documentary Film Festival. Several years later, a number of Deep groups, mainly in the north of England, worked with photographer Ian Beasley, poet Ian Macmillan and cartoonist Tony Husband to create a whole series of banners as part of the Unfurlings project. Three Yorkshire Deep groups from Bradford, Scarborough and York came together to campaign for those living with dementia to receive better support and understanding from public transport companies. Here are the two sides of the huge banner that they created as part of the project The Right to a Grand Day Out. The banner has a negative side showing everything that is wrong with the transport systems and a positive side showing how it should be. The colour red symbolises positivity and revolution. The banner was displayed at York Railway Station. Here are more banners produced by other Deep groups. Preston Focus on Dementia, Budding Friends, Exeter, Cottingley Crew, the Rag Art Muffins, Hamari Yadain from Bradford, Kirklees Deep, and the 6 Deep groups in Kent, all standing together.
So now, can I invite each of you on the panel to introduce yourself and tell us briefly what sort of activisms you have been involved in?
Yo, morning everybody. Great to see people. Well, not see you because I can't see you, but I can hear you or hear your messages. Oh, I've gone to a blank screen here. Ah, that's better. No, it's not.
Don't worry, keep going.
All right, okay. Yeah, so I live down in Kent. I live in Ashford in Kent, and I was diagnosed 10 years ago with frontotemporal dementia, and I've been involved in activism for about 8 years of those 10 years. So when you think of the word activism, that's a word that can kind of scare people, really, because when you think of activism, you think of people rising up and in a revolution and kicking people's doors in and yelling and screaming at each other. And activism isn't really like that. It's about the influencing in change in society and just creating a better understanding in society and working towards a better life for people living with dementia. And it can be done in small and big ways. I facilitated a table at a dementia conference a few years ago, and there were different views on how we could be activists, ranging from small ways of changing things to people demanding that we went and chained ourselves to the Houses of Parliament and we would stay there until there was change. And it was a novel idea, but I kind of think if you're starving yourself to death, that's not going to really help into the future, is it really? So but all ideas are on the table, but I feel that gently catch your monkey. Now I'm part of two groups down in Kent. I'm part of the Phoenix group, which is in Ashford, and part of the East Kent Forget-Me-Nots. And sometimes when you're involved in activism or change, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And a good example of that was in Canterbury. We've got the Marlow Theatre, and we were invited in to have a look at, after they changed everything and reshaped it all, they invited us in, and Philly came along, she helped us. And so we went in there and we put forward our suggestions on how it would be much more dementia friendly, the things that they did. The trouble was that they'd already done it. And so therefore, there was very little change that they could, and in fact have done to the building. I mean, particularly the toilets. It was like going into a dark cave, you know, and there was no signs on the door to be able to get out, and it was horrendous. Conversely, the Phoenix group were invited to go into the borough council offices, to the public reception area, and put forward some ideas, which we did, and quite a lot of things that we suggested, they did change. Like the surface outside was very uneven. There were some things they couldn't change, like the lift. When the doors opened, you had a black rubber floor and you had mirrored walls, and it was really quite horrendous. And we suggested they might change that, but they weren't able to, because that was already part of the building, and it was going to cost them too much apparently to change that. So sometimes you can get change and sometimes you can't. And a good example of that is one of the chaps that's actually on the screen today, Martin Gardner, who's a member of the Phoenix group alongside me. And he felt that we should be able to record the meetings that we have on Zoom, so that we could then go back and look at them again. And it's all right to have minutes of a meeting, but they don't actually cover everything that you've discussed. And he felt that we should be able to do that, particularly as it's challenging to try and remember things after the event. And so we were straight away up against, can't do that, data protection. But that didn't deter us, and it didn't deter Martin as well. And so we pushed on and pushed on. And at the beginning of every one of the meetings, we always say, well, this is going to be recorded, like this one was recorded. And so everybody knows. And through the actions that Phoenix took, the KNPT, which is the local health authority, changed their approach, and they agreed, yes, we could record the meetings. And now, not only do we have the minutes from our Phoenix meeting, but we also have the recording of the session as well. So it is possible to get change. But you can get change, and another way we got change was the Dementia Envoys in Kent.
Hi, I'm Wayne, like Chris in Kent, but I'm in the midway part of Kent. I'll try and be a bit briefer than Chris, and just say that I think my activism probably started about the same time as my dementia, back in 2004. Well, I was laid up with a major heart attack, was in hospital and that sort of thing for about 6 months. And I was so disgusted by what was going on in the hospitals around heart attacks and the wards and that sort of thing. That started my activism, because I think I've kind of been given a second lease of life, having survived this major heart attack. And I thought, well, I really don't care. What I didn't realise at the time is that dementia had taken away my caring about consequences, and now I just say what needs to be said whenever I feel like it needs to be said. And I think that's a major part. For me, the definition of activism is doing whatever is necessary to change the details of a day to make it doable. And I hope that having a voice through Deep, that makes a lot of change for a lot of people. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Danny. I support the Sunshiners down in Kent. So we've got involved in many different projects, supporting activist work. So, but yeah, I mainly support them. They direct me.
Oh, hi, everyone. My name's Tricia and I'm an assistant psychologist. I work with Forget Me Nots, and I've also been with the Sunshiners for the last couple of months. And like Danny, I support as and how I'm needed. And I guess the most recent thing I've done with the Sunshiners is they created some really amazing leaflets for children of different ages to explain dementia. And we've managed to get those onto national teaching websites and international websites. So educators around Britain and the world can access these wonderful information leaflets that also have some puzzles and things for the children. So well done.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I live in Stockport, which is a couple of miles from Manchester. When I was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's in 2017, I was given the contact for Dementia Diaries, and that was a lifeline for me to be able to say exactly how I felt. And as Chris Norris says, you get the nitty-gritty and the raw feelings from us. So I can recommend Dementia Diaries.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. And we can put that link in the chat as well. And in fact, Wayne and Chris and Jackie and Tracy are all dementia diarists. It's a fantastic resource and really recommend it. So do apologise about a few of the technical problems we're having, guys, but stick with us. I think now what I'd like to do is ask each of you what you think others can do to support people with dementia in their activism. And I'm going to go back to you, Chris, because I'm feeling really guilty for interrupting you in mid-flow. So this is my balance.
No, you shouldn't feel guilty. You have to shut me up, because that's what I'm like. I saw the shepherd's crook come on and drag me off. Yeah, you can help support people in their activism through small steps. So an idea is put forward, or a challenge, a person's having a challenge, and then you can all sit down and work out a way forward. And it's my belief that you can change comes in small amounts. It's a drip on the rock that splits it. It's not going in, certainly not going in kicking down doors, because all you do is you put people's backs up. So you have to, it's gently catch your monkey, and you have to, and so you can support other people to put their voice forward. It's much more powerful if you're doing it as a group rather than individually on your own, because then, you know, there's a weight behind it. But encourage people to get their voice out, because so many of us, it's very easy to just think, oh no, I really haven't got the courage to say that. But in numbers, you have got the courage to say it, and you're not specifically identified as being this revolutionist that's going to, you know, and in truth, if you speak to people in the right way, you have to get them on the right lines to be with you in the first place. And so it really is, like Winston Churchill said, jaw, not war. I think that creates that creates the change that we're looking for.
Thanks, Chris. I think that's a really important point to pull out. The importance of just encouraging people to feel that their views and the things they're not happy with, perhaps, are worth talking about and worth making a fuss about that. Thank you for that. Who else would like to come in with thoughts on what support can help activists? Jackie, and then Wayne, I think.
As I go to quite a few events up in Bradford and hopefully soon other places, people assume that every day I'm okay. Even if I'm in my powered wheelchair and I can go fast on a mobility scooter, they think that I'm okay. What would help is if people would say, do you need any help today when you're going to your event? Or to say, Jackie, do you know how to get back to the station? If we don't look after people every day, people are going to feel vulnerable and not volunteer again to do things.
Do you find that those sort of practicalities are still often overlooked, Jackie?
Yes, definitely. Excepting when you're with people from innovations in dementia, they never assume you're okay. They always ask you, is there anything you can do, I can do for you? You know, is there anything you need? But other people just always assume you're okay because I can go fast on a wheelchair.
Mm. Okay, well, that's a great point. Wayne, did you want to come in?
Yeah, before answering your question, and just to be a bit of a pain rather than an activist, on most of the sessions so far, there's always been a mention about the Dementia Diaries, which is wonderful, because as a dementia diarist, obviously I'm biased, but one of the greatest and unsung resources from Deep is the Hints and Tips site, with thousands of ideas from people with dementia, for people with dementia, of how to get through their day better. And seeing as that's what's kind of come out of all the activism over the 10 years, I think that should get the highlight mention. So there you go, I'll shut up on that one.
Great
now.
point. We'll put the link up, Dementia Tips Share. Yeah. Okay.
Second point, before talking about what, I've got 6 points that I want to make on how Deep support us or what is needed to support for activism, which I'll deal with quickly. But before that, can I just sort of say some of the things that Memorabilia have done as activism that will support why I think those 6 things are important. We've had our local council change the process for people with dementia to reapply for their blue badges and bus passes, cutting out the paperwork and that sort of thing. Local GPs are now starting to do home dementia reviews instead of you having to get to the surgery, which leaves you in a bad mental state and therefore clouds the issue of the dementia. We do lots of mystery shops in mystery shops in the local shops, companies, museums, around the hospitals, and all those sorts of things to change things on a daily basis. We got the local cinema to change their lighting systems before the film starts, so that people can get to their seats without falling over, going up and down the steps. McDonald's now are changing their black mats and putting a big red M on them so that people can see it's not a hole in front of the door. And doing lots of dementia training for the bus and the railway staff, all of which I think make a difference to people's daily lives. So they're the sorts of things.
Amazing. That's amazing, really practical achievements. Yeah.
Well, that is spread over 8 years, so it's not like we've been beavering away for the last month. But you know, all those things I think have made a difference for hundreds, if not thousands, of people throughout Kent. So we're rather chuffed with that. And the answer to your question, Philly, about what Deep can do, I think
not what Deep can do, but what can anybody do to support you?
Right. Well, first of all, as once they found out that we are activists and a group which, as Chris says, gives the power, I think giving us access to the people that have the issues, because we don't necessarily have the issues that we can make changes to. And then help us to understand the priorities, because if they're not our issues, we might not realise how big a priority something is. Lot of help, because we do have dementia after all, in understanding the technical and legal elements of what it is we're about to undertake. Helping in acquiring, and I suppose this is where Daniel and Tricia come in to the groups that they work with, in accessing the resources needed to carry out the activism, and then support in dealing with the consequences of the actions that we've taken, which quite often is a biggie. I do have a reputation for, as I said, if it needs to be said, I'm going to say it, and quite often it's without filters. So there can be consequences to that others have to deal with for me. But then a specific deep bit, which I feel is important, is the deep information sheets that come out of all of this, where people can be pointed and examples of the information sheets about how to talk to people with dementia, how to include people with dementia, and specifically one that I'm not sure whether Rachel actually did it or just directed us to it, but how to put people onto this sheet that tells them how to arrange the travel and transport for people to go to an event. All these things are vital and have come out presumably of all the activism. So thank you very much to Deep and everybody for doing those things.
Brilliant. Loads of stuff to ponder on there. And we'll get the links up to some of those resources that you mentioned as well. Thanks, Wayne. I'll come to Danny and Tricia in a moment, because it'd be really nice to hear about the ways that you have learnt to support people in their activism. But Tracey, I know that you can't see us perhaps, but hopefully you can hear us. You're nodding. I wondered if you'd like to talk a little bit about what sort of support you feel people can give people like you to be activists.
Yeah, I think people just forget that even though we act independent, and we are independent to the point to our best, sometimes it'd be nice if people just say, "Oh, what help do you need? What help do you need?" I mean, I've done loads of I'll help businesses in our local towns, looking at how they can make things more better for not just people for dementia, but everybody really. If you can get it right for one person, for a person with dementia, you should be getting it right for everybody with all sorts of conditions. Because why should people be, "Oh, you've got dementia, so we have to be nice to you"? You should be nice to everybody. And I've had that said to me before, and it's how it's not, sometimes in the past I've wanted help to get to London, or if there's lots of complicated changes, and people just don't, or meet me from the station so we can get to the venue without me having to figure out what taxis to get, how to get to, because people don't, sometimes even around Kent, people don't think about that. You just have to you're supposed to be doing a talk, you have to make your own way, and they just forget. I don't think it's just because they just don't think about it. Does that make sense?
Does indeed. People are nodding.
Yeah,
I think often people just don't realise what a huge effort it is for all of you guys just to get to where you're going, while you're also thinking about the reason you're going and what you're going to say and all these things as well. So yeah, thanks for raising those points.
As my dementia's got worse, or is worsening, I find I probably need more help. Whereas in 7 years ago, I didn't hardly do anything. I used to just make my own way, to sort myself out because I was able to. But now I find it very complicated, very hard, and for me, I have a problem in asking for help, because I think people should. The expectations that I think people should understand that they should offer, but now I've learned that actually people just don't think about offering. So if they don't know how they supposed to understand that we
Yes, we're all guilty of that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so who'd like to go now, Danny or Trisha? Stick your hand up, one of you.
I was just going to say, actually picking up on the transport issue that Tracey, that's something I learned very quickly that personally I hadn't thought about when I started working with dementia service user groups. Because I started, I think it was like a week before the Forget Me Not's 10th anniversary, and they were celebrating in Grove Ferry, and I'm not from that part of Kent, so I had no idea where it was, and I was ringing people to remind them, and one of the service users said to me, well, yes, I am coming with my friend, but I don't have transport. I don't know how I'm going to get there. And I thought, oh, so I actually ended up going to pick this lovely lady and her friend up, but it hadn't even occurred to me that, you know, people with dementia would struggle, and it was quite a steep learning curve, because I realized how naive and ignorant I was. But that really helped, because when it came to the deep event in Folkestone in September, I knew that beforehand I would have to sort out transport if it meant that our service user members could get there. So I was able to kind of think ahead and try and book taxis so that they could attend the event. And I was lucky that I did find some good firms that were flexible. But I think you're right. To be honest with you, I think it's something that the rest of us take for granted, and we don't appreciate how difficult it is. Just getting somewhere, because not everyone, I know Chris drives himself normally, but not everyone is able to do that.
Great, thanks, Trisha. And Danny, how have you learnt to support people in their activism?
I think, echoing sort of the transport issue, I think one thing that I have noticed is that it's a fine line. It's a fine line between sort of supporting and taking over by giving the lift, but also empowering the person to stay independent. So quite often I'll find that, you know, people with dementia will struggle to get to our group, or will struggle to get wherever we've planned to go, because we're not always in the same location. And so we try to sometimes reach a compromise. Where can you get to? Where does feel easier? And then I'll pick them up from that point. So it might be that they need to travel into the centre of Folkestone, and then I'll take you the rest of the way to Hythe, just to try and keep that independence, so that they're aware that they are still able to do it as well, rather than taking over. Because I know that something that's been echoed in our group quite a lot is, please don't take over, because, you know, we will lose our independence quicker. So to be honest with you, I guess my learning of support has been to listen more than anything else. You know, what do these people need from me? What do they want? And then finding out what their experiences are, and how it might be frustrating at home when my husband always makes the cup of tea, but I'm more than capable. So then taking that and transferring it into another environment, I guess.
That's a really great point, Danny. Thank you. Got a comment from Kathy, who says, I love this, a literal version of meet us where we are. And a comment from Chris as well, who's nodding away, and so is Jackie there. We've got a question from Martin, but I just wonder, Rachel, whether we could have a little look at the other film that we've made. It's only just over a minute long. Give us all a little break, and then we'll come to Martin's question.
We all stand together. Here we are, all standing together. We all stand together. Here we are, all standing together, in the teeth of this rough world's gale, working as one to fight against whatever threatens to make us fail. Here we are, we're all standing as one, as history's slow pit-wheel turns, and we'll stand together till the work is done, and everyone lives and learns. Here we are, all shapes and sizes. The sunshine shines and the paths are found, and the seaside's new and the phoenix rises from this ancient Kentish ground. Here we are, please forget us not. We're a memorabilia of the powerful kind. We stand together where the struggle's hot, in the endless battle of the mind. We all stand together. Here we are, all standing together.
Lovely. I think that poem was written by all the Kent groups together. Is that right? And spoken by Malvin and Alan from the Sunshiners. Lovely. Sums it all up. And of course, our very own Chris on the trumpet. We were going to go to Martin's question, weren't we? Martin Gardner asks, if you are not a member of a group and feel something needs change, who do you turn to? Good question. Anybody got any thoughts? Wayne.
That's really why the groups all started in the first place, because so many people individually were having issues and there is nobody to turn to that listens. So people started coming together, and that's what the groups are for. So, you know, if you have an issue but don't want to become part of the group, there's still ways through all the dementia cafes, etc., that word can get back to your local group, and then your local group can take it on, and hopefully you will benefit from it.
Any other thoughts?
I would agree. It's very difficult if you put yourself out there in isolation and stay in the wilderness and wander for 40 days. You're not going to be able to get the support. So it's really just encouraging people or making them aware that these various groups exist. And certainly down here in Kent, we've now started having dementia coordinators who are there to guide people in the various directions that they can go, whether it's to a cafe, whether it's to come along to an activist group like Phoenix, and having somebody there to guide you. I mean, at the end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And Martin and I were talking about this yesterday, that, you know, we do an awful lot to try and encourage people, but if they feel it isn't for them, then I think they're going to carry on with their frustration. But there are groups out there that can help, and Deep is evidence of that. The bringing together all of those various groups so that we're stronger and more powerful, and we have a solidarity if we're putting a message across. So that's the only thing I can do. You can just talk to people, but if they feel it's not for them, well, then it's not for them. But it can be frustrating because you think it's there. All you need to do is just grab it. We're offering you, come on in, you know, welcome all. You know, it's a wonderful place to be. Come in and join us. That's really all I can say, really.
Wayne.
Yeah, on that, people that are feeling alone and fighting something, I think that's where the diaries really come into their own, because once you're given access to the diaries, I'm not trying to minimize anybody's individual issue, but once you get access to the diaries, you'll find you're not alone. It's probable that whatever it is you're going through on an individual basis, others have been there before over the time and have found local or national solutions. So the diaries really are a step in the right direction of not being alone.
That's a good point. And also, I guess, even if there isn't a physical deep group in your area at the moment, there have been, there has been a development of quite a few online groups, hasn't there? I mean, the Dementia Diarists meet every week online. So that's a good way for individuals, I guess, to get that feeling of solidarity and group support.
And activism isn't, you know, you don't have to be afraid of it. It doesn't have to be about big things. It might just be a simple thing like, well, how do I do this? And it might be something very, very, how do I phone a sky engineer and get them to understand my language rather than their language, you know, so it can be little things, but those little things bubble away when you're on your own and become overwhelming.
I'm going to ask Rachel if you want to come in, if you want to put your camera on, Rachel, and help us with this.
So there I am, Rocky in a corner, stressing over technology, and you suddenly put me on the spot.
You're doing great. I knew you could cope.
Sorry, what was the question?
We're still on Martin's question, really. If you haven't got a local group, where can you get support as an activist? Yeah, you know, I have increasingly, I guess since COVID and lockdown, have increasingly received emails from individual people who are saying, I've been diagnosed, or a friend of mine or my parents have been diagnosed, and where can I go and what can I do? And of course, it's a postcode lottery of where there is good and bad support, really. And but increasingly, there are more and more people who are coming up and saying, well, can I set up my own group? It doesn't need to be very complicated in terms of, having a bank account and everything like that. It can be that, there are some people like Wayne, for example, they've gone out independently, and I know that there've been lots of issues around setting up a bank account, things like that. But if you're looking to just get peer support and not necessarily have to generate an income or receive money, then actually you can do that. And there's a really good recording from the Leamington Spa, the Buddies event, where Ken Howard talks about his motivation for wanting to get a group started. And he talks about how he just wanted to get people together in a kind of a non-clinical environment. So they found a pub, which was quite quiet on a certain day in the week, a certain afternoon. And they just started meeting as a group, and this group has grown and grown and grown. And but it's a really powerful audio to listen to, with Ken talking about it, and then Roy talks as well about the importance of the group. But a lot of people sort of say, well, where do you find other people with dementia? And funnily enough, it's often professionals who ask that question as well. But I mean, social media is always a really good starting point. And I know not everybody's on social media, but it's just about making those first connections. And I think that very often, signposting people towards the diaries has been really important. And we've got Lorraine Dunn up in the Northeast, who is setting groups up in the Northeast now. She's a lady living with dementia. We've got a lady in Leicestershire who's only been diagnosed a few weeks, who's talking about setting up her own group, and kind of really working with kind of local community resources like libraries and everything to say, can I have a group meet here? Or, there are some groups that use, some supermarkets have community rooms where they'll give you free tea and coffee to go and be in that space as well. So I'd say, speak to other people with dementia through the Deep resource. If there isn't a group in your area, you can connect some way with other people living with dementia around the UK through Zoom. And just don't be alone with it, and come up with inspiration and ideas by talking to other people. Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Jackie?
I think that we all need that comfort and that feeling that what we are going through, other people are listening to us. And that's what happens on the diaries. We know that the coordinator is listening to us. And sometimes we are able to be connected to other people who have been through the same thing or are going through the same thing. In addition to that, it's nice to know that in Dementia Diaries, people become friends. And if you are not having a good day, they notice that. And if they are concerned about you, they are able to just make a gentle contact and say, you know, we're here for you. Because sometimes it can be very lonely, and you go on all these Zoom meetings and you're putting on a nice face, but it's nice to be with people that know you well, that you are putting on that face, and they can offer support.
I agree, Jackie, and I think that this is something I mentioned yesterday in one of the Zooms as well, was that we can't underestimate how much effort it takes to reach out. You know, if you've been, when you reach the point of receiving a diagnosis, you may have been struggling for a few years, and your confidence will be lower and lower and lower. And so your sense of being a worthwhile individual to do anything or to reach out to anybody, that anybody might be interested in you, which is why I think we, you know, all of us need to invest so much energy in supporting people and being that friend before anybody is in a position to, you know, to stand up on a bigger stage and do bigger things.
Thank you. And Tracey?
Yeah, I was just thinking back to when I first got diagnosed, and I was quite young when I got diagnosed. I was 45. I had trouble when I was 44, so it was like a year before I got diagnosed. And I felt like I remember feeling like a fish out of water, because one, there was nobody my age in my area with dementia. And I didn't quite know what to do, because nobody, talking to my friends, they didn't really understand because they didn't have any problems. And I remember being signposted to a memory cafe, which is all very well, and to hands on heart, you know, there are these, but they were full of 80 and 90-year-olds, unfortunately. And I just felt like, although they were very kind, I just felt like I didn't really belong, because the age group was so wide, fast. And I remember somebody saying about Sunshiners, who I belong to now. But then it's still very scary when you first get a diagnosis. You're overwhelmed from the diagnosis, and then you go into a group that you're not sure about when you've only been to memory cafes for the older generation. So I met somebody called Diane, who belonged to the group, and we met on one-to-one basis, went for coffee, and it was just like coming home, just because one person out there in the whole vast of anything, and it can, even though we had different dementias, it was that helped. And I always say to people, you can find a group. It might not be I wouldn't say I was a groupie person, but I love my group that I belong to, because we do so much good. We do a lot of activist work within the group. We get involved in projects. We help people understand. You know, it's about. I prefer to be a doer. So the group that Sunshine is a doer group. So we go out and try and change the world. But it's nice to have a group for, even if you want to support a group for support. It's trying to find the right group that suits you in that way, rather, you know. And unfortunately, we've had people in our group that they didn't like it because it wasn't either supportive for them. But I just think if people can find the right group for their little niche that helps them, and then that should help them with their dementia, because actually it really helped me.
Thank you, Tracey. That was really powerful. I think your phrase "coming home" sums up what many people find and feel about just meeting someone else who's in the same boat, or a small group, and then starting from there. And although peer support and activism are kind of two different things, they seem so closely intertwined that you can't really have one without the other. So we're coming up to finishing point. We've just got a couple of minutes. Could you just hold up your hand if you got a final point that you'd like to make, and then we'll see, or if there's anybody who's got a final point that they'd like to make. Have we got any more questions? I'll just, right, okay. Right, we've only got one person who wants to make a final point, and that is Wayne. Take it away, Wayne.
This would be my final point. I think this is the greatest thing for dementia meetings ever.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And I think you can actually print those off, can't you, from the Deep website, Rachel? Or if somebody wanted a whole batch of them, we can sometimes send them out.
Yeah, and actually, what very few people know is that you can actually download a Word version of it and bespoke it. So you could download a card version saying Wayne wants to shout or something like that, you know.
And we've got them in different languages.
And they're available in Scots, Gaelic, and Welsh. But the reason it's got an editable version is so that anybody in any language can create their own language on the card.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank all of our panel. You've been brilliant. You've given us loads of food for thought. And I'd encourage all of the other participants to register for any more sessions you'd like to come to this week. The more the merrier. And have a lovely rest of the day. Bye, everybody.